Thanks for attending the planning meeting, Tuesday the 8th of November 1922. I'm Councillor June Molyneux, Chair of the committee. Councillor Alex Hilton is Vice Chair. Please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. If you're a member of the public who is registered to speak, you will have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or if you're in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds, otherwise you will be muted. For ease, a pack's been prepared which contains report, plans, presentation slides for each item to ensure everyone can easily follow. After officers have presented the report and any speakers have made representation, I'll invite members to make any comments. When you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to do so. When invited to speak, please remember to turn on your microphone. I probably won't, but try to. And switch it off when you've finished. Please, can you reference the paragraph page number to allow everybody to follow you? With that, the first item is apologies.
We have apologies from Councillor Aaron Beaver with Councillor Sarah Ainsworth substituting and Councillor Alan Whitaker with Councillor Arjun Singh as substitute.
Okay. The minutes, please. Can somebody move the minutes of the meeting? Oh, and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. They've been approved. Any declarations of interest? Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in matters, in respect of matters in the agenda. If you have such an interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before business starts to be discussed, but you do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately after. So have I any declarations of interest? No. Moving on, planning applications to be determined. We have 3 items tonight. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for planning applications are as follows. Officers will summarise the report and registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I will grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings, and can you switch your phones to silent, please, if you've not already done so. Item 3A is the 7 Stars Inn, Eaves Lane, pages 7 to 28, with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item. The officer recommendation remains as the original, that planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I have 3 registered speakers: the objector Christopher Blake, ward councillor James Nevitt, and the agent Roberta Sanna. Roberta, can you hear and speak?
Good evening. Yes, I can hear.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you.
Right, Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. This application relates to the 7 Stars Public House that's located on Eaves Lane, opposite its junction with Lyons Lane to the east of Chorley Town Centre. Planning permission is sought for the change of use of the vacant pub with apartment above to a 10-room house in multiple occupation. External changes are limited to removing the 7 Stars sign to the front of the building, changing the rear door to a window, inserting new windows to the ground floor rear elevation, inserting a basement window to the rear of the property, and adding a cycle storage area and bin store in the rear yard area. Neighbour objections have been received from 16 individuals, including Councillor Hasina Khan, on the basis of parking, highway safety, residential amenity, inadequate bin storage and the loss of a community facility. No objections have been raised by technical consultees, with LCC Highway Services noting that no off-street parking is required due to the site's sustainable location, and they have requested that secured covered cycle parking is provided for future residents, which is to be secured via the imposition of a condition. The site is located within the settlement area of Chorley, which is identified as a key service centre in the Central Lancashire Core Strategy as a focus for growth. Members will also be aware that Policy V2 of the Chorley Local Plan sets out that within the settlement areas that are excluded from the Green Belt, there is a presumption in favour of appropriate sustainable development. Also, Policy HW6 of the local plan seeks to protect community facilities, including public houses, where they are serving a local need. One of the representations received is in relation to it refers to the loss of the public house, and it is noted that there are other public houses in close proximity to the site. Although the loss of the public house may be regrettable in some ways, this reflects a general trend of such closures. With the premises having been made available for rent and sale earlier this year, a viability appraisal has been submitted with the application that supports the applicant's case that the existing use of the building as a public house is no longer viable, and this is supported by a statement from the previous owner and operator of the pub. It is therefore considered that the loss of the public house is acceptable in this instance. The way in which the property would be used would have little impact on the character of the area or upon residential amenity, given the extent of existing residential properties in the vicinity, and the comings and goings from a house with 10 rooms would be less intensive than a public house. The retention and conversion of the building would be a positive outcome, as the building is one of character and contributes positively to the street scene. It is noted that the Highway Authority has not objected to the proposed change of use, and that the application is in an area of high accessibility in relation to employment, shops, schools, health centres, bus stops, the town centre and community facilities. Given the sustainable credentials of the location and the parking demand already generated by a public house, the under-provision of on-street parking is considered to be acceptable in this instance. Members will also be aware that a site visit took place last Monday. As per the report, the proposal is recommended for approval. And I just draw your attention to the addendum. There are some additional representations, both from the applicant, for two further objections, and some commentary about rights of access. There is an additional condition recommended, but that actually, I'm reporting that that should be an informative rather than a condition attached to any decision notice, and therefore the reason wouldn't be required, as it would just be simply an informative. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Good evening, and thank you for that.
Yeah, have you switched your microphone on?
I have, yeah. Brilliant. First of all, I'd like to raise the objection there based on parking. I don't know who from the council's written a report, but I live on the street. I live on Devonport Way. There's often times when you approach Devonport Way and you can't pull into the street safely from Eaves Lane. Cars often block the junction to the point where it's impassable by either normal vehicles or service vehicles, ambulances, paramedics, etc. You can't park on the street at the best of times due to location near the school. The pub was never an issue because most people actually walk there. So it generally wasn't a concern of the area. However, 10 people living in a very small area who potentially could have vehicles will clog that area up very, very quickly. I'd like to point out this evening, and for the past week, there's actually been a vehicle parked illegally outside the pub, who is someone that is working within the pub to build it. That's parked at the actual junction at the top of Lions Lane and Eaves Lane. That's been there for a week and continues to remain there. Second objection I have is in relation to antisocial behaviour. The area itself has seen a significant increase in the last year, last 12 to 18 months, of antisocial behaviour, with nothing being seen to be done. As I said, the Sheps Arms is another similar proposition, 10 bedrooms, or is it 8? There's been instances there of cannabis use and antisocial behaviour there that hasn't been dealt with appropriately. And that continues to be an issue for the streets in general, as Eaves Lane. And it continues to be that way now. I mean, the amount of times I walk down there and my dog's stepping on glass as a regular occurrence outside of that particular place. And the final one that I have here is, it's an individual place. I mean, it's 10 bedrooms. Individuals usually end up in a one-bedroom bedsit, usually have high needs in terms of social care. They usually have dependency issues and need adequate support. The Sheps Arms is a shining project of failure, as far as I'm concerned. There's been adequate antisocial behaviour there. And the concern of the street and myself is this going to be another example of failure by planning to actually put things in place for the residents there to support them? We've already seen an increase in crime. We have a nightmare with parking. There's forever nearly accidents at the junction. Is this going to just exacerbate the issue even more? That's how it seems from a resident's perspective. I can't park outside my own home. I'm disabled. I spoke to the council. They're fine with the parking, yet there's adequate times where I'm parking 3 streets over, and I can't into my own home. I'm effectively trapped by lack of parking in the area. So for the council to say there isn't an issue with parking is, I'm sorry, just a farce as far as I'm concerned. And that's the end of what I have to object. Thank you.
Councillor Nevitt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me the right to speak tonight. Also, my thanks to senior colleague Councillor Hasina Khan for her representations, and of course to Mr Porter-Blake for bringing the perspective of local residents, and I think he raised many of the key issues that are here tonight. To frame the discussion to begin with, a summary of the local area. I mean, Eaves Lane has now become the major route linking Blackburn, Darwin, Brinscoll and the M61 through to Chorley Town East, Rivington and on to Horwich. It is arguably busier than the A6 running through the Chorley Town Centre because of the historic congestion that you see there. So this is a major route. We're proud to be a major industrial hub within Chorley. There's a lot of industrial traffic and business traffic moving within Chorley Town East as well. So that frames the context of there being a high traffic demand as there is at this particular junction. Hopefully I can present at least 3 key reasons tonight for rejection and why this is an unsound proposal. And the first is, as Mr Porter-Blake and Councillor Khan have said, that clear evidence of the local parking congestion, the inability of this to build a cycle cabinet at the related Shepherd's Arms HMO conversion only a few hundred yards away, the lack of any suitable parking provision in this application, all of these meaning it contravenes policy ST4 of the Chorley local plan. There's clear evidence of that local parking congestion, and the local plan even states in paragraph 4.25 that any attempts to restrict parking and car ownership through mitigation measures such as a cycle cabinet are in effect unrealistic and carry no impact. As I've mentioned, there's still not a cycle cabinet at that Shepherd's Arms, which amounts to a failure to impose the conditions of that planning application. It was also naive to assume that putting that condition in there in the first place would mitigate any parking impact, because the reality is most people do not use cycles. Most people do rely on cars for some form of commute. So it was always untenable. The second reason is the rich local history that we have at the Seven Stars. It dates at least back to the early 1800s as a public house. It was formerly used to hold coroners' inquests. There's also some history with tenants that were engaged in the Great War there as soldiers, so there's a clear local history there. The sort of internal demolitions which this report says would be involved, and the alterations taking out historic windows, chimneys and brickwork, would really be to the detriment of that local history. Arguably, it would be an act of iconoclasm. We'd be destroying rich pieces of our local history. There are items in that building, whether it's the historic glass, whether it's the paintings found behind the plaster, all of that would be lost if we don't take action now. And I think that would be contrary to the spirit of policy BNE8 of the Chorley local plan. While it isn't a listed building, there are clear reasons for retaining this as a historically valuable asset. The third reason is the various contraventions of policy BNE1 of the Chorley local plan and the impact this would have on the immunity of the local area. Mr Porter-Blake raised the likelihood of antisocial behaviour. Now, policy BNE1 point H says that applications should have a clear plan for how to work with the police constructively and a clear plan for how to address community safety. Now, a lot of the people that rely on HMOs like this, and they are obviously a very important alternative source of housing, particularly when people don't have high incomes, and they do work in areas such as St Thomas's Road in Chorley Town Centre. I'd use that as a clear example of where HMOs do work. A lot of the people that use them are quite vulnerable. As Mr Porter-Blake said, they might have additional needs that we need to support them. What that means is there are some people who have nefarious intentions and some people who don't come to the town centre with the best intent. who actually exploit that situation, as we found at the Shepherd's Arms, where essentially one or two tenants are holding the rest hostage by using the front as a makeshift garage, and there's also various other issues. So, you know, given the scope of the issues and the fact that this application doesn't show what would be used to mitigate that, I think that is one clear area where this would be contrary to policy BNE1. Additionally, the dangerous parking. Where are the contractors going to park during the internal demolitions? Mr Porter-Blake has clearly shown there is already that that parking issue. So just to wind up, Chair, I don't want to be called out to another road traffic accident and explain to residents why this has happened. So please reject this application tonight on the basis of these at least three arguments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Roberta, would you like to speak now, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So today I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant and on behalf of Windsor Botany Architects, a firm specialized in designing quality co-living accommodation. Our proposal is to convert the property located at 8486 Eaves Lane, currently known as 7 Stars Inn, into a 10-bed HMO. So it's a terrace property composed by a pub at the ground floor with storage in the basement and a flat at the first floor and a rear yard. The proposal will require minor external works limited to the removal of the pub sign and mainly internal works to create 10 bedrooms, all en suite, large communal area with kitchen, dining and living, and extra amenity space in the basement, including laundry room, co-working area, gym, and extra storage space. The property also benefits of a rear yard, which will be provided with properly sized waste management area, bike storage, greenery, and sitting area for the tenants. We understand that the number of proposed occupants might be a concern, but please keep in mind that the previous use of the building was a public house, so the disturbance generated from the pub would be far greater than 10 tenants. That being said, as we value the tenants and the neighbors' well-being, the aim is to have the right tenants in the property. The tenant profile are young professionals which can't afford to rent a house or a flat of their own and would find much more convenient to have to rent a more affordable accommodation. So why having an empty building when it can't be used to house this category of workers? The property is located in a strategic area, being only 800 meters away from the train station and having a number of bus stops nearby, and it's within acceptable walking distance from the town centre. As highlighted in a transport statement submitted with the application, the development will not have a detrimental impact on the area for a number of reasons. Main of these being, it is expected that car ownership amongst future HMO occupants will be minimal to none. The property used to be a pub, so likely had a higher volume of people and cars stopping by or leaving cars overnight. The pub would also have regular food and barrel deliveries, and neither the pub or the flat above had associated parking facilities. With regards to the policy frame, we do appreciate that policy HW6 of Chorley Local Plan seeks to protect local community, community facilities. Please keep in mind that 7 Stars Inn has been sold because of the activity being unviable, as stated in the viability report. The area would still be served by many other pubs, one of these being on Eaves Lane, which is about to reopen following a large refurbishment project and is expected to attract a large number of local customers, reducing the need for further pubs in the area. So to recap, the reasons why we think this property will offer a quality development are the following. Generously sized bedrooms, it meets local HMO standards, amenity space, promotes green mobility, quality tenants, noise control via installation of acoustic insulation, and the current market is in need of this type of occupation, this type of accommodation, with a very few options available in the local area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do you need to come back on anything, Adele? No, over to you, members. Councillor Heaton, Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. I've read the report. There's no provision for disabled access, is there, on this application? And if there isn't, should there be?
It's an existing building, and any conversion works would be subject to building control regulations that would oversee any disabled facilities that would need to be provided for access. It'd be a matter for building control to deal with.
Thank you, Chair. Listen to the arguments, well founded, but at the moment I really see no reason to refuse this. There's a presumption of the type of people that are going in there, which we can't take into account at all, and it's not our job to do that. The parking issue, it's been clear, highways have stipulated it's in a sustainable position, and therefore, again, you presume people always have cars, but given where it is and the lack of parking, which is not required, as it says in the report, you can't presume you're going to suddenly find 10, 15 cars surrounding it. It is a busy street, and it is a lot of parking going on at the moment on the pavements, and it's mentioned that vans are being parked illegally. Well, get the police onto it and get them shifted. That's the job of the police to do that. It's not the job of the planning committee to decide who should park and who shouldn't park illegally or legally. It's a historic building. It's been around for a long time, so we've just heard. But it's a building that's slowly going to rack and ruin. And the front will look pretty much the same. It will still look impressive. It will still have that historical influence on the area. It will be modernised and brought back into life internally. And at the back, okay, there's a change of windows, but everything at the back of there is all modern anyway. There's a lot of new housing and so forth. But the front, which people see and are influenced by, will remain pretty much the same. If there are lots of historical artefacts in there that need preserving, then I'm sure if locals or groups in Chorley, historical groups in Chorley, were to approach the people who are developing it, they could maybe remove some of the historical artefacts for preserving somewhere else, so we can still see those. But at the moment, I'm minded to propose we support the recommendation in the report. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor France?
Thank you, Chair. Just slight concerns on what the Ward Councillor, Councillor Nevitt, brought up about the bike store at the other HMO. I mean, the bike store is a big part of this. I went on the site visit. Obviously, there isn't any parking. The big question is, if that is factually correct, we need this bike store, and that would just be a concern for me at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor France. I have made a note to follow that up at the other HMO, because clearly this committee granted that consent on the basis of that condition was accepted as meeting the relevant tests in the MPPG. So to require cycle storage in lieu of on-street or off-site parking is a legitimate condition and a legitimate requirement that this committee regularly imposes on developments and residential developments. So I will follow that up. So again, we have the condition here, and if we receive reports that that's not being provided, then we will certainly follow it up, because we are empowered to take actions to ensure that happens, and we will follow the other HMO up. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought you might not know the answer, and as I say, I do have traffic concerns as well, but yeah, I think the bike store is very important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hilton, and then Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Morwood has said. I see very little reason to refuse this application. If there are cars blocking the junction, it needs to be reported to LCC and the police. I don't think there's going to be any impact on local amenity compared to what it was as a pub, frankly. There's been comments about antisocial behaviour, and I'm not sure there's the inference that this HMO will actually increase that. There's no evidence that that will be the case. But what I would say is, if there's a lot of antisocial behaviour and crime in the area, I would encourage local members to work with the Public Protection Department and the police to try and tackle this. If that's already in the area, then that action needs to be taken. I cannot see how this will actually increase that. So I'm in favour of this application. I'm happy to second it. Thank you, Chair.
To the speakers as well for outlining their concerns. I think none of the councillors in here have any doubts that Eaves Lane isn't a very, very busy lane within Chorley. Looking at the mapping, there's huge amounts of residential development around there, and there always has been. My immediate concerns with regards to the parking, but looking at the scheme in general, it isn't suitable for parking around the area. But we've seen a few of these schemes in Chorley recently over the past few years where parking hasn't been essential because they are smaller schemes, 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, and they're in incredibly sustainable locations where they're part of the mixed-use town usage, which is Eaves Lane has got retail, leisure, hospitality, and also in schools, etc. So I'm kind of in favour of that, and I agree with LCC's comments with regards to the highways work. I am a little bit concerned that there's a presumption that HMOs are always used for vulnerable in society. That's not necessarily the case. The applicant made it quite clear that they were aiming it at young professionals who don't have access to accommodation, 2-bedroom accommodation, smaller accommodation, etc. And we do welcome 1-bedroom apartments within Chorley. Even so that within 100 yards down the road, we've got our own scheme. Chorley have got their own large scheme, HMO, if you wanted to call it that. The Tatton development, 56 apartments and very little parking associated with that. I don't have an issue with the scheme in principle. We are here to judge an application on planning matters, and I'm more than happily support the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Okay. Okay, Jodie?
Members have resolved to approve the application in relation to the 7 stars in, and that's approved in line with officer recommendations, and the split was 4, 11 and 2 abstains.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 3B, Eaves Lane again. Pages 29 to 46, this is 105 Eaves Lane. Adele's going to present this item, and the officer recommendation is planning permission is granted, subject to conditions, and we've one registered speaker, the ward councillor, Councillor Nevitt. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the conversion of a single 5-bedroom dwelling house to 3 self-contained flats. The application site is comprised of a single dwelling house located at the junction of Eaves Lane and Seymour Street. The immediate area is predominantly residential in character and falls within the settlement boundary of Chorley. There are two district local centres within walking distance of the site, situated on Eaves Lane and Steeley Lane, and under a mile from the town centre. Chorley is an area identified for growth and investment under the provisions of Policy 1 of the core strategy, and both local and national policy has a presumption in favour of sustainable development in settlement areas. The framework attaches great weight to the benefit of using suitable sites within existing settlements for homes. Given that the existing dwelling house has 5 bedrooms and has a lawful use for independent living by elderly people as a single dwelling house but not as a care home, it is considered that the proposed scheme for 3 self-contained 2-bedroom flats would not result in any significant intensification to give rise to adverse amenity impacts of noise and disturbance to neighbouring properties. The application does not involve the provision of any on-street parking. However, as the previous application, the site is situated in a sustainable location where public transport options are available, with local services and amenities nearby. Again, Lancashire County Council have been consulted on the application and advised that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site, and that no off-street parking is acceptable in this instance. In respect of public open space, there is currently a deficit of provision in Chorley East, and therefore a contribution towards new provision in the ward is required from this development. The amount required is £134 per dwelling, and this would go towards Tatton Recreation Ground Play Area, and this would be secured by way of a Section 106 legal obligation in order to comply with the provisions of Policy HS4 of the local plan. To conclude, it is recommended that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and a legal agreement to secure that the financial contribution that I mentioned for the children and young people. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Councillor Nevitt, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's a shame, obviously, my comments on this are going to be almost the entire reverse of the situation with the Seven Stars for many reasons, comparing one that's a 10-bedroom dwelling on Eaves Lane with no parking provision to one that is a very sensible 3-bedroom conversion with actual parking provision available. The maps might not reveal it, but at the top of Seymour Street there is currently some parking provision available, and around the corner there's some bays at the front of the properties on Eaves Lane. So actually, funnily enough, we do have a conversion here that would work, that would be sustainable for the local area. Chorley East is prepared to absolutely do its part to address the borough's shortfall of housing supply, to address its future housing needs, in spite of already being the most densely populated ward in Chorley, which I think Adele raised there. I think I'm quite glad that we're going to see this contribution because of the lack of open spaces. It's a shame that we couldn't see that on the 10-bed application that we've just seen, because of course that would bring more money into the local area. But again, I'd like to say the reasons for approving this are quite sound compared to the last application. I think this is a very sensible application. I read through the reports submitted by the applicant. They were far more thorough and appreciated the local circumstances than, unfortunately, the previous application. But nonetheless, I would support this application and encourage members of this committee to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nevitt. Can I remind you, we do consider each application on its own merit, so not to keep going back on the other one. Adele, you want to come in?
Yeah, just for clarity, and just as a point of record, really, we're seeking a financial contribution to the provision of open space here because your local plan has a policy that sets out where dwelling houses are proposed. We can seek contributions towards public open space infrastructure to make the development acceptable in planning terms. No such contribution can be sought for other types of development that don't fall within the dwelling house use class category. So in this instance, the 3 flats are dwelling houses that are effectively a C3 use, and whilst a house that's occupied by by separate individuals living en famille, up to six in the household can also be classed as a C3 dwelling house. HMOs are in a different use class, and there is no policy provision within your local plan to seek such contributions, just as a matter of record. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Adele. Over to you, councillors. Councillor Heaton.
I move the recommendation, Chair, after listening to the Ward Councillor. Is very happy with this application, so I'll move it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sherwood. Thank you. Councillor Morwood.
It's just to make a comment that we focus too much on car parking and highways and so forth in a lot of these applications. And we mustn't presume that everybody has got a car. There are lots of young professionals who are quite happy to use public transport, and when developments are in a sustainable area, we should be encouraging the use of bikes and walking and the rest of it. I just wanted to say, you know, it's part of our job really to encourage less use of cars, and these are the perfect examples of that.
Councillor France.
Very quickly, Chair. I see in paragraph 4, there is no, there's a recommendation from highways for a cycle storage. Obviously, paragraph 29, there isn't one. I would have liked to see one, but I don't see any, that's a reason to refuse the application.
Okay, any more comments? Because I've had a proposer and a seconder. So I'm quite happy to move to the vote. Okay, Jodie?
Members have unanimously resolved to approve the application in respect of 105 Eaves Lane, and that's approved subject to
You can escape now,
the
James.
conditions in the report and the Section 106 agreement.
Okay, moving. Excuse me. Moving on to item 3C, Go 8 Rivington Lane, Rivington, pages 47 to 66. Ian's going to present this item, and the recommendation is planning permission is granted subject to conditions, and I've one registered speaker, the applicant Dan Stafford. Ian, can you present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the rerouting of an existing zip wire and extension of a landing zone due to the poor health of a tree that is currently used as a launch point at the Go Ape ropes course in Rivington. The application site is within an area of woodland adjacent to the lower Rivington Reservoir that's part of a designated historic park and garden and is in the Greenbelt. The site comprises various timber structures, zip wires, raised platforms and ladders associated with the existing Go Ape ropes course. The framework and local plan allow for the provision of appropriate facilities for outdoor sport and recreation in the Greenbelt on the proviso that the development preserves the openness of the Greenbelt and does not conflict with the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt. Given the current impacts of the existing ropes course and structures on the site, the proposed structures would not be materially larger and would not have a greater impact on openness than the existing development. The proposed changes to the launch point, felling of trees and extension of the landing zone would not be harmful to the character of the area in the context of the existing ropes course and given the position of the site within the woodland. It is also considered that there be no harm to the setting of the registered park and garden or any other heritage assets. The proposed development is therefore considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Dan, would you like to speak now?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate Ian's points there, that we have had to redesign the course because of poor tree health. The solution that we've found is the one with the least impact. It's a reconfiguration of the course by moving one crossing and one station to a tree that's already being used as a support tree within the course already. So we don't have to use a new tree, essentially. And it basically allows us to continue with our normal operation and carry on as we've been doing since, I think it was 2007 that Rivington was built originally. And it's a site very close to my heart because before I became business development manager, I was manager there for 18 months. And it's a good site and it deserves to kind of carry on as it is.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have any issues with this application. It's a minor change to an existing setup, basically, and a very popular tourist draw to that area. It isn't going to. The application itself is not going to increase any traffic flow or any foot flow because it's already an existing use, as I've just said. With sustainability and the trees, you know, we've got to work around tree and wooded areas when these type of courses are built, because the health of trees do deteriorate over time. So, for a safety perspective, they're moving one of the courses. Like I say, I have no issues with it. It's an application which for us is a box ticking exercise. It's a tree that's already been used, which is clearly demonstrated on the application, and I'm more than happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Ainsworth, Councillor G.
Thank you, Chair. Can I second the officer's recommendation for approval?
Thank you very much, Chair. I have no objection to this. I'm quite happy. The only thing I would like to ask, and I don't know whether it's a planning issue, or whether the planning know, it is a safety aspect. Are these trees, or are they inspected by Chorley at all, or do they go around and inspect these trees to see that any damage, any disease or that? I know it's not your department, but I just wondered whether you knew.
Ian.
Yeah, through you, Chair. The trees are the responsibility of the landowner, United Utilities and the operator of the course at Go Ape, and they do carry out inspections themselves. So the council doesn't carry out inspections of those trees, although we have looked at the trees affected by this particular application as part of the application process.
Councillor Eaton.
Thank you, Chair. It's Jury now speaking again. There's some concerns about this, about comments like the more courses growing. No, it's not that one. The condition of the site is a concern, and no one appears to be showing any interest in the maintenance. I'm not objecting to the application, but I just thought I'd mention it as a representative of the companies here. That maybe that would be something they could look at.
Anyone else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Right. Sorry, Jean. Sorry, Councillor Sherwood. I missed your hand.
And so be it. And they're working around this situation. I've no objection to this whatsoever.
Right. I need to vote now. Can we move to the vote now? I've tried. There you are, Jodie.
Members have resolved unanimously to approve the application in respect of Go Ape at Rivington Lane, and that's approved subject to the conditions in the report.
Thank you. Confirmation of a TPO number 1 in Euxton, pages 67 to 70. Adele, it's you.
Thank you, Chair. This report essentially seeks your authority to confirm a provisional order that was made earlier this year. Thank you.
Councillor G. Thank you. Are you doing this through the chair? Are you putting your hand up and coming? I don't know. Is my answer to that. Where is this tree, he said, because there's no...
Actually, I meant to say that, and that's a very good point. I do apologise. There's no plan accompanying the report. It's actually trees at the Gled Hill development in Euxton. So I can let you have a copy of the plan if you'd like me to email it to you. Yeah, okay.
Can somebody second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Can you vote on that, please? Ooh, I missed. Says you've not voted, Councillor Heaton. There you go. It takes a while. Okay. I couldn't comment.
Members have resolved unanimously that the Tree Preservation Order number 1 Euxton 2022 be confirmed.
Okay. Item 5, the appeals report, pages 71-72. Adele's going to present this.
Thank you, Chair. The only one I really want to bring your attention to, and I did mention it at committee last time, the decision had been made just after the report had been published, and that's the enforcement appeal at Chisnell House Farm, where we took enforcement action, and the inspector has upheld the notice and has given a partial award for costs. Thank you.
Okay, can we note that report, please?
Can I just ask a question, Chair?
Yeah, of course you can.
When you say partial, what is there a percentage, or is there an amount?
The amount will be calculated depending on the officer's time dealing with a specific matter. It's not for the whole costs incurred by the council. It's
what
a specific.
About the consultant, you had the
barrister. It's basically the barrister's costs and officer time in relation to a specific matter. So they're currently being calculated. Yeah.
Okay. Item 6, the validation checklist, pages 73 to 124. Adele's going to present this.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members will be aware that when planning applications are being submitted, we require a certain amount of detail to accompany each application, and essentially the validation checklist sets out what is required to support each type of different application. And essentially, we need to update our validation checklist every 2 years. I anticipate that as the local plan progresses and gets closer to adoption, in 2 years we'll be doing a much deeper refresh so that the supporting information reflects the new policy framework that will exist at that time in the future. So we need your agreement that it's republished with the various amendments that are set out. Thank you.
Councillor Boardman.
All 49 pages, Chair.
Good.
And happily
I'm so pleased.
support it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is everybody happy? We need to vote that one through, please. Okay. Thank you, Jodie.
Officers have, not officers, beg your pardon.
Members.
Members have unanimously resolved to republish the validation checklist in accordance with the officer recommendation.
Okay. I've no urgent business, so that's the end of the meeting. Thank you, good evening, and have a safe journey home.